Now we're going to jump into the main event. So Jeremy Brown has graciously agreed to present today about the WebViewer, and his topic is Think Inside the WebViewer. And we're just really excited to have him here. He has some really cool, fancy technology for his presentation. So I will let you take it from here, Jeremy.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to not share my screen, but I'm going to use this. So there you go. The host has spotlighted me. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more resolution from this method here. Yeah, I try to be fancy without distracting from the content. So anyway, today, welcome. Thank you for having me here. We're going to talk about the WebViewer and look at just the power of what we can do with this little object that's inside of this object. And I'm not talking about me, even though I'm inside of the object. It's fun to take a look at a specific thing. I was here, I don't know, last year, I think, sometime, and I think we talked about like all you can do with JavaScript and FileMaker, and that's cool. We showed a lot of examples, but what I'm interested today is looking at the specifics of the WebViewer. Before I get started, I'm going to use Slido, so I'm sorry if we're going to have to switch here, but what is your experience with the FileMaker WebViewer object? You can use that link there, the QR code, or I think we put it in the chat. Thank you. So just plop in what you think. What is your experience with the WebViewer? Wonderful. All right. 5 people have responded, so I know you might still be firing it up here. You can answer it as well. And I'm just curious. We'll go to the next one here. What have you done with the WebViewer? Would be the next question here. You can just type a quick sentence in there or a couple words that explains what you've done here. All right, quite a few people are typing here. I want to see what's out there in the community about what is being done. Very good. So we have quite a range of items that are being done inside the WebViewer here, from simple Google Maps to just really complex widgets, I call them, and so forth. So that's great. A little bit about me. Hi. I'm the owner of Integrating Magic, where I'm focused on doing these integrations and not just focusing on FileMaker stuff, whether it's APIs or JavaScript or widgets or websites with FileMaker as the backend. My idea is to just focus on these little things. I provide these widgets for people as well as training. I really love the training aspect of working with JavaScript and FileMaker on the other side of me. So that's part of my business, and hopefully, it'll be a full-time part of my business. But I love doing widgets for people too. I've developed maybe 100 in the last year and a half so far for different people, and so it's really a good. I like to focus on just this WebViewer. On the JSNFM side, I host a site called JSNFM, and I have the link here. I'm developing a community of people who are interested in talking about JavaScript and FileMaker. Claris Beyond is for beyond the stuff of FileMaker. I am going beyond FileMaker, but kind of sticking inside of the WebViewer by focusing on what we can do with JavaScript, I guess, inside of it. So I guess I'm the opposite. I'm not going beyond. I'm contracting. I'm going inside of FileMaker a little bit. The community is something that I'm really I'm trying to build up and make sure it's strong. We do a lot of try to do a lot of activities in there. We write about JavaScript. There's 310 members at the moment, and a lot of us participate asking questions or putting posts in there about our experience with using JavaScript and FileMaker. It's found at the community.jsnfm.com. There's a lot of stuff, again, there's a lot of stuff that goes in there. All my courses that I offer for free and some paid ones are hosted inside of the community. We do live office hours 2 times a week. We talk a lot about data tables, which is kind of the default library that many FileMaker developers know about. And there are a lot of links to resources. Maybe I have the selfish goal of trying to find one place where a FileMaker developer can come and she can learn more about how to use JavaScript, because she doesn't have time to search all over the internet for stuff. She wants to find what's, the most useful and practical. I don't claim that I'm the only one that has the most useful stuff. I'm just trying to form a community around it. All right. So that is what we're gonna take that is the community. My goal today in our time together is to just continue to talk more about JavaScript and FileMaker, to spread the good word about it. Today and every day, everything that I do when I'm in my business is to spread the word, and we're going to do that today. I'd like to provide trainings for people, for FileMaker developers, to learn JavaScript efficiently and effectively. I'm really interested in saving you time in learning this and using it, using JavaScript. And again, I mentioned that I build widgets for people who want to use them but don't really have the time to do it. So that's more about me. Our agenda for today is to take a technical look at what the WebViewer can do. I just want to list out the features of the simple WebViewer object that are accessible to all of us, that give us all of what we need to build great widgets to solve problems for our clients, and give you some inspiration too. I do want to talk about the quirks of the WebViewer when it comes to different parts of it, different uses of it, but that's what we're going to look at. And as I talk through these different features, if you have something that pops up in your head, please speak up and share that idea. We have it's our goal as FileMaker developers to solve problems for our clients. But we want to be efficient with it. We want to use techniques that are well proven, that are easy to grasp and master, and that give us a lot of performance, a lot of functionality in the quickest amount of time. And obviously the learning part of it is not even on here. We want to use techniques that we can learn pretty quickly. So I know that's what FileMaker developers are thinking. So we're going to start from there and talk through the WebViewer and how it works. The WebViewer here, I've identified at least 9 or so features here that the WebViewer can do, the technical things that it can do. Since FileMaker 19, this object here gives us all of these abilities that we can combine in various ways to solve problems for our clients. So I'll just read them there from the top to clockwise. Trigger functions from FileMaker. We can push data out. We can handle large data sets. We can develop and preview in real time, run on any platform that FileMaker supports, handle large code, use as a calculation, use as a UI, update anyone so we can have multiple web viewers and focus on one of them at a time, and we can send data in. So these are the features that I use every day that I'm teaching to students in my JSNFM course, and we talk about daily in the community. So as we don't have, we have a good amount of time today, but we're not going to get through these all. So what I would love for us to do is, knowing these features here, please quickly pick 3 of them that are interesting for you to hear about today, that you want to know more about, and we'll focus on those. And then the others, you can be part of the community and learn more about those, or check out my YouTube channel and see more. So pick pick at least 3, and whatever order comes up here is the order that will follow throughout the day. So I'm gonna pause here and let people set the agenda, set the order for today. All right. So keep on going, keep on entering. I will, look back at this once in a while and see what it is. Okay. And we'll just go as far as we can, and again, be part of the conversation later on. But let's talk through these. Looks like trigger functions from FileMaker is one of the top ones. So we'll start with that, but keep on entering. 8 people have entered. So we'll go with those people's at the moment with that agenda and take a look. All right, so keep on entering as you would like. Oops, the UI just changed as number 1. We'll let's see here. We'll go back. Let's see. All right, I'll give it a couple more seconds here. All right. All right, we'll go through this in this order. I think that's a pretty good order, and we will do what we need to do. So the first one is using as a UI. So the WebViewer is a powerful object in FileMaker because it can produce any UI that we want it to produce, that we are able to develop inside of it. It's a browser. It has all of the functionality of the websites that we go to every single day, all of the possibilities of features in those. Now that we're at FileMaker 19.3 and higher, Windows and Mac don't have any discrepancies that really matter. I'm not sure that I can think of any that matter at the moment, but we can do pretty much anything. We can use a web viewer as a UI element on the screen in 2 ways. We can make it as an entire part of the layout. The entire layout is a web viewer that displays whatever we need it to display, or we can just make it part of the layout. It can be a subtle object that's somewhere in the layout, that's on a popover or a slide panel, or tucked in a corner, or even invisible. If we're using it for UI, we don't want it to be invisible. We can take our styling and our that we have for FileMaker, for our theme, and we can incorporate the ideas of the styling, the theme, into our widget. It's completely separate. We have to use CSS in the JavaScript and the HTML stuff, but we can get it as close as possible to that idea. Here's an example of what I mean. I have, we'll go to this first. I have an app that I'm using internally for handling the courses that I teach. One of them is called Data Tables in Depth, and it just talks about the data tables platform library. And so I've got this form view that helps me to organize my thoughts around it. I've got the information about the course, and then over on the right, I've got all the lessons that, or in this case, all the modules that represent this course. Over here on the right is a data table integration. It's a web viewer, and it helps me to see my my code or my modules in a nice manner. The features that allows the features of data tables gives me a lot of possibilities and just adds to the it adds to the experience of understanding this record or this course. So as good as I could get it, I have styled it to look like the rest of the theme inside of this file. Got the same blue across for the headers. I've got roughly the same colors, the same fonts. So I worked really hard to make sure that this UI element was as close to it as possible. And by the way, if you have questions, there's lots of places you can ask them. Kate, where do people usually ask questions? In the chat or in Slack, or just speak up? How do you usually, does it matter?
Usually we prefer Slack. I mean, because then it
Okay.
keeps a history. So there's
Okay.
under Meetup discussion. Yeah.
Okay. So using it as UI element is pretty nice. I have another example of this where, let's close that one and go to this one here. Open this up. Here's another example of a full course here, a full layout. I've got this weird little picker here that is designed to show people, like, kind of built a dwindling list of ideas of products that they can select, and then ultimately end up in a shopping cart of some sort that then can be sent back to FileMaker and used some way. So this gives me a chance to make a full screen of data that gets organized in a nice manner. This one right here, let's see what this one is. Nope, that's not working. So I have the ability to pretty much do anything I want with this web viewer. And these two instances were showing parts. The fact that a web viewer can be used as a full screen UI, but it doesn't have to be just that. It can be as small as a date picker that's on the side that can be used. So the ability to use a web viewer as a UI is tremendously powerful, and it's the primary reason why we would want to use a web viewer. It does have some quirks. There are some weirdnesses about this, and again, speak up if there's anything else that comes to your mind. When you're working with a web viewer, you have to make it active. So if you were to put a web viewer inside of a popover and then expect people to start using it, there can be an extra click kind of issue going on, because opening it up in a popover doesn't automatically make it active. It loads it for sure, and it will load the code, but it doesn't quite yet make it active to where people can start interacting with it in a meaningful way. So that's just something to be aware of. And it's just, we just test and we figure out how to make it work. So it shouldn't be too big of a problem, but it is something to think about. Also, that scroll bar, the pesky scroll bars of the web viewer, they can really get in the way. You can have scroll bars on scroll bars. And so you have to work really hard sometimes in the CSS and the HTML to remove the web viewer's scroll bar, to use the library's options to, like this this picker, or the web viewer thing that I have in my course. Let me pull it up here. The web viewer thing in my course, I have to see, I've got this one here, this right here, and I could potentially have another you can't see it, another scroll bar. It gets a little bit messy when we're trying to work with things. So we just got to be careful about how this lays on a page, and just make sure that it's working. But it's not horribly difficult. And what's interesting too is that the web viewer caches the data for each record. So I've got 5 records here, and as I scroll through them, as I click on these, I have some issues with when I come back to one, you see there's a little flickering, and that's because the web viewer itself caches this record's data. This record's like the whole HTML widget, but I'm causing it to reload again through a script when I click on this record, when I go to a record. So I'm kind of getting a flash of stuff. And I need the loading of the record, of the data, of the widgets to trigger it to load and go fetch the data. But then I'm getting a silly flash for when it's cached. So I have to finagle with that. That is a quirk. If I'm using it for, on individual records. So something to consider and to think about. All right, any thoughts or questions about using it as a UI? This was just brief. It's not, meant to be everything about it, or, I'm not going to get into final details, but it can be used as a UI. All right. The next one is, according to the discussion, the thingy up there is working with functions. So we can, since FileMaker 19, we can use FileMaker itself to tell JavaScript to do something. This is the most powerful thing that we can do. Once we have something built inside of the UI, inside of the WebViewer, we can have FileMaker change it all we want. Usually we're tapping into what the library provides us in their API. So a library is just a code base that can develop a table, and it comes with a bunch of functions in it that we can cause to make changes. I'll show you that in a second. And we basically can control everything from FileMaker. I like controlling things from FileMaker. I like scripts over calculations. I like to let a button press or a trigger do what I want it to do when it's time to do it. I know other people use lots of calculations, but when it comes to like summarizing data, I would prefer to just use scripts to do that. And we can do that here. It does have, well, let's look at it. Let's look at this one right here. So I'm going to bring it up. So here's, oops, I brought the wrong one. Let's try this one first. Okay, this one right here. So this one's an example of the data tables library that loads records into a table. Again, this could be a full screen or just a portal-like looking thing. Once we have it loaded, we can use FileMaker buttons that are here across the top that run a script called, in this case, show hide column, that causes the data table to change in some way. So if I click this, I can have the city column removed. That's a FileMaker script that's causing the JavaScript to make a change. I can destroy the table. I can, let's load it back up again. I can clear it out. I can load it. I can get some data out of it if I wanted to. There's a ton of stuff that we can do with the WebViewer. The WebViewer allows us to control this thing in here by calling some functions. And just on the very surface, those functions, here's that show hide column. I've got one script that is going to run this perform JavaScript in a WebViewer script step. This step needs a function name, and in some cases it needs some JSON. Like this case, I'm saying, go hide the city column. And so all of this combined into this step number 9 here will find the function that JavaScript has called show hide column, and it will cause that function to run. So we have complete control over what this is. If I were to, I could come back in here and say, and change this to company. I think maybe company will work. If I wanted to hide the company column, let's reload it. I guess I don't have to. No, the real name is probably company name. I think that's the name of the field. So let's see, there we go. So now I'm able to change, and we can use our FileMaker skills now to give people options to hide or show columns based on a checkbox or some UI. So we have complete control over that. The interesting quirks are that I'm sorry that it's hard to read the code. It's it's FileMaker. It's very small. I'm sorry about that. I will if I need to take a screenshot, I will and post it on the screen so you can see. The quirks of this possibility, when we are trying to cause the WebViewer to make a change or to run a function that's in the JavaScript is that the web viewer actually has to be on the layout that we are working in. So we still tied down to this web viewer object without using any plugins. The web viewer has to be there. That kind of makes sense because the code that we want to call is actually in the web viewer. So it has to be present. It has to be present. We have to make sure that the web viewer is loaded with all of its code before FileMaker can find the functions and work with them. Okay, so if I load like this web viewer here, I have it set. When I load it, it has to be all loaded in there. These functions that I'm going to call via the script are now available from FileMaker's point of view. FileMaker can find them, and they can FileMaker can find them and add and do whatever it needs to do. So that's just a weird quirk, and in most cases, it's not a big deal. This is loaded well before someone wants to change things, so it's okay. It's not usually a big deal that I run into. Oh, okay. So I said the third one first, but the first one is important to understand, and I'll show an example of it. Hopefully my code will be easy to read. I'll make it big. The functions that we write in the JavaScript must be placed in a layer in the JavaScript, in the browser actually, where FileMaker can reach it. FileMaker can only go so far down into the browser to get code out of it. And so we have to take our functions that we write, and in some way we have to elevate them to what is called in the JavaScript the window or the global space. So once a function is there, then we have freedom to do that. And I'll show an example of that. Let's see here. Let's do this right here. And I'll make it, hopefully you can see this. I'll make it a little bit bigger. So this is a function called load clients that does some things. In order for FileMaker to find this function, I need to put it up on the window. So I write the function name and I put it up on the window using this syntax, and that's where FileMaker can reach it. If it's not there, then FileMaker, if it's not on the window, then FileMaker can't reach it. So that's just a small quirk that we have to be aware of as we are using JavaScript in FileMaker. It's easily overcomable. It's one word in front of a function name that makes this happen. There are other ways to, good question, Mike. There are other ways to put it on the global space or the window. This is the one that I use most often, and it's just the simplest to explain in this case. Mike, the web viewer can be off screen. I believe that's the case, except for in WebDirect. I think WebDirect, it actually does have to be on the layout in order for this to work. So it's just something to know about, that it does. In WebDirect, it has to be on the actual layout. But I'll show an example. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, yep. Yes, yeah. All right, so let's go to the next one. Develop and preview in real time. Okay, this is one of my favorites. So when I first started my JavaScript in FileMaker and JavaScript journey, JavaScript in FileMaker journey, I did what I was seeing out there and was trying to come up with a unified way. When I worked at Saline Consulting, I made a file called the WebViewer integrations. It contains like 50 integrations, and every piece of code that I was using was in text fields. And then those text fields, I did a substitution in some sort of in a calculation dialog, a calculation field, and then that was pushed into the web viewer. That is really hard to do and be efficient. With now here in 2023 with FileMaker 19 and higher, we don't have to rely on putting our code into fields anymore. We can instead use modern tools to work efficiently with JavaScript. We can use a code editor like VS Code and FileMaker right next to each other and work with them at the same time and develop our code while seeing it render in the browser, in the web viewer. When we use these tools together, we're able to see the results. We're able to find the errors, see them really quickly and fix them. And we're able to make sure that the data is getting put in correctly. And the tools that we have now let us deploy the code and redeploy it very quickly. So let me just, I need to show an example, of course. So what I use in my daily environment, I think I've talked about this before in various methods in various ways. I have some code here on the left, on the right. Actually, I need to open up a new code base. There's this one. This over here, this is how I develop when I do my work. I have VS Code on one side, I have FileMaker on the other side, and I'm using these two in tandem to make everything be nice. So here's how I develop. I start over in VS Code. I start up a little server to run. All right. Then over here in the FileMaker, I make sure that the highlight or sorry, you can't see that. Oh yeah, there's the dev mode button is on. And now I can load up the web viewer and go over here to VS Code and make some changes. So for example, this is a highlight mechanism. If I can type in any keys, any letters, and it will automatically highlight those. My client says, that's great, but I really don't want it to be blue. So I can come in here to my style in this case, and I can change it from blue to red. Make that change, save it over here in VS Code, come back over here, reload it, and I see the results of the code that I have done over there. So as a simple example, I'm working together. This is like layout mode and browse mode at the same time, where I'm able to see what I'm coding right away. And of course, if I get any errors, like it's hard to make an error at the exact moment. Actually, I'll do this. That'll be a nice error. Number one, I'm going to see the error over here in VS Code. It's going to tell me there's a problem. Number two, FileMaker is very clear about there's an error. And number three, I have a console here that allows me to see what the error is right away as well. In this case, it's gobbledygook. I would have to rely on other methods. But this is an efficient way to do development. I got rid of the word because I have some bias for sure, but I couldn't run my business if I had to put all my code into certain fields and then make them work without seeing the nice, structure that VS Code and something provides. I mentioned the little server that runs this environment. I call this the JS Dev environment. This environment is set up for people to do exactly what I'm trying to do here and code efficiently. And I put together a template in VS Code in a repository on GitHub that has everything you need, including that little server that allows you to code without having to worry about what's happening. When I run the npm start at the bottom, I don't know if you saw that, it's small. And when I run npm start down here, there's a server that starts up that the web viewer in the FileMaker file can read and can listen for changes. So this is a basic server. It says server running at localhost 1234. And that's what this FileMaker web viewer is listening to. And so whatever I'm doing over in VS Code makes it replicate or results over there in FileMaker. This this is a whole thing. It's what we talk about every day in the community. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here. I have documentation on this too, but again, my biased opinion says this is an efficient way to do it. This is how Todd Geist and I developed the add-ons when we were working on those back in 2019 or whatever, a form of this. So again, you don't have to know all about that. You can read about that on my documentation site, but it just works for you FileMaker developer. Now, I mentioned the deploy and the redeploy. So I'm going to do something here quick. I'm working on this hard. I get it. They wanted it to be that red, and so I made it red. And let's see here. I won't worry about the changes for right now. And they say, yep, that looks good. I like the red. So whenever I load it, it's highlighting the text in the color that I want. I say, fine, great. I'm ready to deploy this now. So over here in VS Code, I run another little command that says run npm run deploy to FM. And it will take all this code that I've written over here in VS Code and put it over here into FileMaker right there in that text field. So the text field itself is where the code is stored. And now any users can use this. Any of the 100 people that access this file can use this red highlight when they come to this page. The client may say, hey, Jeremy, we don't really like the red. Let's go to yellow. I say, okay. So I go back over to VS Code. I update the color from red to yellow, save it. I redeploy over here in VS Code. It goes over to FileMaker and updates it. And then the next time they come in, they can see, oops, I made a mistake. I left the text color to be white. So I'll disable or get rid of that and redeploy. And now every user has the color that they wanted or that was chosen. Okay, so that is using the modern tools. That is what we can do with the WebViewer. We can basically attach VS Code and other code editors to our FileMaker file. And this doesn't have to be just this dev file. Every repository comes with a JS dev file that's all set up, but you can connect this to your real file, your client file, in a couple minutes, and then be happy coding in VS Code and see the results with your client data, with your client file. All right. So that is that. Let's see if there are any quirks. Let's see, where was I? We were on develop. Let's look at the quirks. You do have to get used to working in two separate spaces, FileMaker and VS Code. So it's a little bit different than what we're used to. It is browse mode and layout mode and script workspace all at the same time. What's good about that, of course, is you've got it all. You've got all those modes in VS Code, and you can see the results over here in VS Code. And then I'm having to press this load whenever I'm doing development and I make a change. I'm having to press the load WebViewer button to reset the WebViewer and reload it with the fresh JavaScript or the fresh code. So that's a little bit annoying, but I've just gotten used to it and haven't really worried about it so much. But that is a little quirk about this. Okay, let's see, any questions? Nope. All right, let's keep on going. We can, with FileMaker 19, with the WebViewer, we can send data into the WebViewer. The WebViewer is a separate piece of technology because it's a WebViewer, it's a browser. But since FileMaker 19, we have had a strong connection between the two, the strongest that's ever been. And I'm not sure that there's if there's any more steps. This is probably as good as we're going to get it, where we can collect data in FileMaker, we can send it to the WebViewer, and then the WebViewer can render it. And there's a lot of ways that we could do this too, and I'll show the example, but we can, the biggest thing we can do is send all the data in at once. So the web viewer is blank, and then suddenly the table appears and there's all the data that's in there, and all the records are in there. We could also build our system to say, all right, I want you to go ahead and load the table, make it empty, and then go fetch the data. So there could be a delay. That's kind of like you know how the web viewer will use that loading symbol if it needs to load the data. The portal. We can do the same thing. We can render it and then go fetch the data at a later time. All of the add-ons do that, by the way. You can render the calendar, it goes fetches the data, and then it returns the data to the web viewer. And we can also just choose when we want to load data. We could load data by pressing a button. We could load data on a timer. There's a lot of possibilities with how we could load the data. So here's an example. So I've got this blank web viewer, okay? Not very attractive when it comes to a layout. But when I press this load web viewer button, it will load the code that I wrote, and it will go fetch all of the records, and in this case, just put them into buttons that are nicely spaced across the area. So this is a possibility. The data is coming in all at once, and you know, we just don't have any problem with it. We could also, if we wanted to, I'm going to just make a change here. We could also fetch the data. So we can fetch the data. In this case, the web viewer has been loaded with all my code. You can see some buttons here. And I can say, you know what, I want you to go fetch the data just one at a time after a couple seconds. It's just like a second or two. Go fetch new data and place it into the web viewer. This is a seamless transition. There's a seamless gathering and placing of the data. There's no refreshing of the web viewer in any way. So we can ask we can ask any library to go fetch data. We can ask the browser to go the web viewer to go fetch data whenever we want. Or we could just do it all at once, where we say, all right, got an empty web viewer with some renderings, and when the user is ready, they can go fetch the data when they want. In this case, they're just fetching one record at a time, but you know, it could be fetching a whole set of records. And of course, this button that I'm pressing, it's a JavaScript button, but it's running a FileMaker script. That FileMaker script can have any number of parameters in it that tells this what data to return. All right. So it's, you know, I'm sorry, I'll try to make the script workspace as big as it can get and hopefully as clear. But it's really about with FileMaker 19, we have the ability to go get some data as in a script step here, and then pass it all into the JavaScript at the very end. That's what I've been doing for all of these examples, collecting data, then pushing all of my code into the web viewer and pushing all of the data in at the same time. So when that happens, this is what's going on. The web viewer loads the web viewer, the script loads the web viewer with the code and loads all the data in at the same time. In this case, I'm doing a little bit roundabout by saying load it in again, but now let's run another script that will go fetch the data whenever I want it to fetch the data. And it's all using, in this case, it's using the execute data API script step, which I find so useful for FileMaker development, for JavaScript development, to push data into the web viewer. So that is getting data in. We have a lot of ways to get data in. We have a lot of flexibility with that. We can, it's weird that we have to rebuild what FileMaker does really well. It fetches 100 records at a time, you know, list view. It, you know, can automatically reload the portal. So we're having to do that a little bit on our own, but the web viewer allows us to do that stuff very simply. There's very little problems with it. There used to be a lot of problems with it before FileMaker 19, but it's gotten a lot easier since then. Okay, so we'll take a look at one more, and then we'll stop for questions and stuff. We've only gotten through about half of them. That's okay. There's a lot of possibilities with what the WebViewer can do, and I'm happy to share more as we go. The last one that number 5 on the list was just handling large code bases. The WebViewer is pretty powerful with, let's see, where is it? Let's see, is this one? Yeah, nope, not that one. Let's go to, okay. So a WebViewer can handle any amount of JavaScript, of HTML code that we throw at it. Whatever Facebook runs off of, our WebViewer can handle that amount of code. There's no difference between what a WebViewer can do and what a regular browser can load. When people make browsers, when people make the code for the browsers, they try to get their code as small as possible because it has to be loaded in dynamically. In our case, we're just pushing all of the code, all of the CSS and HTML and JavaScript in at the same time, and the browser can handle it. The question is where to store it, how to get it in, and so forth. So, in the way that I handle things, the way that I do things is that all of my examples, like this one right here, I'll just pull up this one here. All of my examples, here's an example of a pretty complex app. This is built out of on React, which is a JavaScript framework. All of my examples have all of the code stored in a text field. So everything that needs to run is in here. It's offline capable. There's nothing in here that needs to reach out to the internet. It's all stored in this text field. And then my load WebViewer script goes and gets this code out of this field into a variable and then stuffs it into the WebViewer. We talk about this all the time in the community, elsewhere, is where do we store the code? I have found the most efficient way is in a text field, because I can deploy code to this text field very easily using the process that I built. And it's accessible from anywhere in my system. It just so happens that this layout here has the same context, so I'm not having any context problems, but I can use any method in FileMaker to go fetch this one record, the value of the field in this one record, and I can bring it to the WebViewer and push it in. I'm not using any sort of calculations inside of the WebViewer. I'm simply having a script put the code from that field into this WebViewer. But it's also possible I'm started to work with this a lot more. It's very possible to host your code as well. I host my code on Vercel. Vercel is a great platform that's a little bit, it's accessible for us. And it allows me to host my code here. Where is it? There it is. Host my code here. Here's an example of a data tables integration that's hosted. And I can simply copy this URL that's right here, and I can paste it into the WebViewer, and then now my WebViewer can access this code. So I'm not storing the code inside of FileMaker, but I'm storing it on the internet where it can be reached by my file with no problem. So that is handling data. There's handling large code. There's really no problem with handling large code bases with the WebViewer. All right, so there's quite a few that we didn't get to in this time. I've got videos on these. I'm slowly putting videos out on each one of these. It's a little bit more coherent sometimes in what I'm saying and quicker to talk about. But these are these features here are the ones that the WebViewer can do. So I don't know, let's, if you have questions about what the WebViewer can do, shout it out, put it in the chat, whatever, and I will do my best to answer them. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. That was really good presentation, and just awesome to see all those examples. Yeah.
It's meant to be overwhelming. If it was, I'm sorry about that, but it's kind of meant to be, because I just want to tell you everything this WebViewer can do. All of these solve problems for you and your client. So we need to know what the WebViewer can do to help us, pick one of these and solve problems. We need to know what's capable of the object we're using. So
right.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Right.
I know.
No, I think it's a good overview to really consider, well, what can I do? So I like this image too of all the different options here.